Hello Linux lovers, my name's Wimpy, welcome to my world. Hello, good morning. Hello RJ, how you doing? Hello Paul, good morning. If you are watching this on YouTube after the fact, this was originally streamed live on twitch.tv/Wimpy's World. If you would like to join in interactively with the rest of the community, then head over to twitch.tv/Wimpy's World and give us a follow. So, this is a bit of a different kind of stream today because I'm not going to be doing any live coding. I'm going to be talking about the Steam Deck from Valve, why I declined my option to purchase a Steam Deck, and what I'm going to be making instead. And I'm going to be laying out some initial plans for 3 gaming devices that I'm going to be making that are Linux powered, using the money I would have spent on the Steam Deck. So that's what I'm going to be outlining this morning. I suppose I can see there's a couple of people here who are from the UK. How are you all doing today? It's extreme weather warning. Schools here are closed. The kids aren't at school. The air conditioning is buckling under the pressure. Are you all safe and well? I'm pleased to hear that, McPhail. Yes, you're a little bit further north. Maybe that's a small mercy at the moment. So Paul, no, I'm going to explain myself. So I'll start by getting into it with why I declined my option to buy the Steam Deck. So here is the Steam Deck page, and I've got this highlighted because I need these numbers for later on. I'm going to start by saying I think the Steam Deck is a nifty bit of kit. Certainly, you know, everyone that I've seen who has one has only got good things to say about it. So I'm not declining my option to get one of these because I think it's no good. I think it's excellent. I think the problem is I'll never or rarely use it. And so I was thinking about that. I was thinking about, you know, I was intending to buy this one, so the £569 model, mostly because of the screen that it comes with. So that was the model I was intending to get. I got my option to buy one at the weekend. And I was just thinking about, I've got portable handheld gaming devices and we only use them when we travel, when we go away. And so I thought this is quite a lot of money for something I'm probably not going to use very much. And my daughter probably isn't going to use very much, because when we play PC games, it's at home and we play as a family. So I can't see that this device is going to get a whole lot of use. And just because it's powered by Linux is probably why you're switching channels. And just because it's powered by Linux is probably not enough of a reason for me to invest in it. But I am going to be making 3 devices which have a connection with the Steam Deck. So Good morning, Revarg. Hello, how are you doing? Welcome to the stream. And also, hello, Yannick. Welcome. How are you? So, McPhail says that they like their Vita, but the screen isn't bright enough to play in the garden, which slightly defeats the point. Yep. And Linux Paul says, I didn't pre-order a Steam Deck because I had just got the Switch. Okay, that's another good reason why you wouldn't get one, of course. And that takes care of portable gaming desires. So yeah, as I said, we've got the Win 2 and a couple of the other, you know, GPD type devices, which we have used when we've gone away. But that's really the only time they get used. And then I was thinking about, well, what is it? What do I do when I'm not playing games with ostensibly my daughter, but my wife does join in with some of them. When I'm not playing games, what is it I do for fun? Well, the thing is that I love to make stuff. and I get way more enjoyment out of making stuff, and I spend more time making stuff than I do playing computer games. And you'll know if you've been here recently, a lot of these streams recently have been about making a new operating system called Retro Home, which is a retro gaming OS for the Raspberry Pi. And I do play a lot of retro games, so I'm getting use out of that, and more importantly, all of the kids in our family are getting these small retro styled Raspberry Pi cases with a Pi inside, running Retro Home and a collection of classic games. That's something I started doing around Christmas. Well, I did it about 3 years ago originally, maybe longer even, and I've refreshed them a few times. So that gets quite a lot of use, but I get more enjoyment out of making that than I do using it, if you know what I mean. So I thought, well, what could I make with the same money? So I sat down and had a think about things that I wanted to have a go at, and I've already mentioned Retro Home, and there's a couple of devices that I was aware of, and I've thought about how I could do something different with Retro Home. So we're going to get into that. So I declined my option, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this amount of money and no more than this amount of money to make 3 gaming devices. Now I'm going to cheat a little bit, because this is basically the money that I'm going to spend, or up to this amount, hopefully not all of it, although I think I'm pretty close already. So up to this amount of money to buy new parts, but the idea is that I use as much of the existing equipment that I have rather than buying new. So we'll get into that, because one of these is a little bit more adventurous. So no, I'm gonna have a bud. So Yannick says, and no more than this amount of money. Tongue in cheek, I think. No, this is going to be a hard limit, and what's more, I've started making a spreadsheet that we'll get to later, and I'm going to share it publicly so you can keep me honest. And I already know how much budget is remaining, and it isn't very much, so we'll see how we go. So the first device that I'm going to build with is this, the RazPad 3. This is the device here. And it takes a Raspberry Pi 4 in an in air quotes tablet style form factor. So this is I'm not building this because it's a in air quotes tablet. The reason I'm interested in this is it takes a Raspberry Pi 4 and it has an internal battery. So I'm going to buy this, let's call it a case, and then put an existing a Raspberry Pi 4 that I already have inside it. And then I'm going to do what I've done with the other cases that Retro Home supports and do whatever enablement is required for this to work. So this is a touch screen. I can't remember how big the screen is. Is it 10.1 inches? It's 10.1 multi-touch 720p. So I'm going to adapt Retro Home to run on this, and then my plan is to, because it has an internal battery and it can run for about 5 hours, I'm thinking pairing this with either some wired or wireless controllers. I have some controllers from Google Stadia controllers that might be suitable for this, and this will be a traveling Retro Home gaming device, because the screen and the speakers are built in. It can run off battery for long enough that you can have a decent amount of playtime, and of course it can charge, you know, off a USB socket. So this is the first device I'm going to have a go at making, and I've already ordered the parts for this, and this is what I need, and that costs 189 British pounds. I believe this may be arriving at home today, so I may get to actually doing something with this later this week. So this is going to be a portable retro gaming device. But I've thought of a cunning idea for how to extend Retro Home. Yannick, pay close attention, because I may be asking for some tutoring from you on an idea that I have. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. Slightly farther out, I have found this device, which is the Lyra Plus, which at first glance looks a lot like a Steam Deck. And this again houses a Raspberry Pi 4. And this is where I get into thinking about how to augment Retro Home. So what this team are doing is making this case. I'm hoping to get in on the early bird discount here. I've signed up for the early order, and we can see we're just over a week away from this launching. So I'm hoping to get the case and add my own Raspberry Pi 4 to it. And again, I will adapt Retro Home so that it has all the necessary drivers for this thing to run. But what they're doing here is, you'll see this is clearly playing PC games. What they're doing is shipping a version of Raspberry Pi OS with some emulators and the Steam Link client. So what I'm thinking is adapting Retro Home to have like an initial launcher. So you start the device and it will boot to a screen where you can choose, do I want to go into Steam Link mode, or do I want to go into the retro emulation stuff? So Yannick, I'm thinking that's going to be a very simple UI. Basically, just have some configuration somewhere to define what things it can execute. Ludo being one, the Steam Link client being another, and just having a simple graphical launcher as like the in air quotes display manager. So turn this into a Steam Link client and a retro gaming handheld. And McPhail, already, this is why I wanted to have this conversation here. He says add GeForce Now and Xbox Cloud as well. It is possible. I will have to look into that. But I think it's possible. The reason I think it's possible is I've done a little bit of research on how to deliver a version of FFmpeg which is fully accelerated, but we'd need to do the same with one of the browsers. So I think it's possible. I think that's a great idea. I haven't thought that far ahead in any detail, but yes, that would be wicked, right? If you could connect this to GeForce Now or Google Stadia or the Microsoft Xbox Cloud, that would be ace, I think. So that's the idea for this one. But the Kickstarter doesn't launch for 8 days, and I don't know how long it will be before these things ship. So this could be much further out in terms of actually a project to work on. So McPhail says Chromium runs on ARM. It should work through that. It's true, Chromium does run on ARM. However, the version of Chromium that's shipped with Raspberry Pi OS has out-of-tree patches in order to land all of the acceleration. And there's an issue there where that browser can get very old and not carry all of the security updates for some considerable time. So I need to because I'm not comfortable shipping stuff that is I'm not going to say insecure, but let's say at risky. I'm uncomfortable with that. So I need to give that some thought and look at what the options might be. It may be possible to be able to do it with Firefox as well, so I should be looking into that. So as far as I understand it, it's really only having accelerated H.264 is what we care about for those cloud streaming services, I think, McPhail. And you say Firefox doesn't work so well. Well, we will find out. It's definitely something I want to look into, but what I'm thinking is this idea of this launcher to pick between a streaming service, sorry, to pick between the Steam Link mode and the retro mode, I think can start working on that now for retro home generally and this device. So I think adding that launcher is something I want to start working on within the next couple of weeks, to start making retro home more than just a retro gaming console. Get loads of games that way, but I want access to the PC stuff as well. So Yannick's saying that retro home absolutely needs a way to select a locale and keyboard layout on first boot. Yes, I don't disagree with that. There are potentially ways to facilitate that. I have some ideas. Yeah, I don't disagree. It's an alpha. If you get the version with the desktop, you can configure your own stuff, but obviously I don't want that. What, in fact, why do you need to configure your own locale? Because when it boots into the emulator, it shouldn't matter. It's just a front. Are you talking about the desktop stuff or the emulator stuff? Right then. So that's the first two devices, and then the next device is well, I'm cheating a little bit, but here we go. I'm going to make a Steam console, an actual console equivalent device that sits in the I don't know what you call it, the rack of equipment. You know, it looks like a set-top box. It looks like a, you know, a satellite receiver or a Blu-ray player or something. So this is what I've decided to use, is the Node 202 case, which I do not currently own. So this is a thing I have in fact found one on eBay and I have purchased. Now the interesting thing about this Node 202 case is that it's not actually manufactured anymore, so it's an end-of-life product, but you can find people who have still got some new, you know, brand new in-box stock. And the idea is I will build, using what existing parts I have, a PC to go in here that will run Steam and be a games console at home, but a PC games console. I've been toying with the idea of either trying to get an Xbox or a PlayStation at home, but we haven't. I mean, I did, the last console I had was a PlayStation 3 until it burned itself out. And my daughter's only played PC games, so we have a library of stuff in Steam that my daughter is perfectly happy with. So I'm thinking, instead of introducing a new platform, we'll stick with Steam, and this will be the games console. So there's a bit of nuance in how this is going to be built, but what I'm thinking is I'm actually going to do the hardware build and software setup and the whole process here on live streams. I will take a little bit of time as I pull the parts out from my collection of parts at home in order to build this thing. So I have ordered this case, and it's going to be a challenging build because this case is probably designed about 6 or 7 years ago. So the GPU space is, I think, 2 to 2.5 slots, which for modern GPUs is going to be challenging. So I'll get to that in a moment, because when I do the overhead shot, I've got some toys on my desk. But this is the case I'm going to use because it fits that small form factor thing and it can be orientated horizontally. Now, in terms of the operating system, I am going to use this, and I don't know how many of you have come across this, but there is this project called Holo ISO. And this is, as it says here, this is SteamOS 3. essentially almost exactly how Steam ship SteamOS on the Steam Deck, but available for mere mortals to download and ship on a device. So this is the OS I'm going to use on this console, because I want it to be a console-like experience in the same way that Retro Home offers a console-like experience. And McPhail asks a very good question, which I'm going to dig into a bit more. Would an APU be enough? Yes, with the various, compromises that using an APU comes with, but I'm going to get into APUs in just a mini moment. So that's the lineup of the 3 devices that I'm going to make, and I'm going to explain some more about the PC build in just a moment. And here is my spreadsheet that I've got so far, and this device, the RetroPad, is the thing that's going to use the... Oh, I've spelt it wrong. The Raspberry Pi pad. So there's the cost of that. I have to get in on the early bird deal for the Lyra, and this I'm going to call the Retro Link. And then I don't quite know what to call it yet, but it's the Node box or something. Ideas for what I can call the console, the Steam-based console thing. It's the Node 202 case, and I can't remember how much the eBay order was, but I will update this with the eBay. But it was 60 something pounds, which means that is going to have to change. So I'm probably down to, like, I've got £20 budget to play with to build a PC. But I said I'm going to use parts that I already have. So we'll take a look at the parts that I already have. And I've brought some of them with me today. So here is a collection of things that is the starting point for where I am. So let's start with the sort of the main bit of it. This is my mini ITX test bench. Here I have an X570 motherboard. I have a Ryzen 5 5900 CPU. This is either 16 gigabyte kit or a 32 gigabyte kit. I can't remember which. I have SSDs under here. I can't remember how big they are. That's obviously the single slot, and this did have the 6900, the RX 6900 XT in it until I put that in my main machine. Underneath here, I have a SFX 750 watt power supply. So this is the heart of the PC. And as you can see, just about everything that I would need. Now, there is an interesting limitation for this Holo ISO here. Basically, long story short, NVIDIA isn't an option right now. It can be made to work for certain SKUs of NVIDIA GPU, but it works way better with AMD and to some extent Intel IGPs and what have you. So I've decided, even though I have more options with NVIDIA GPUs, this is going to be an all AMD affair. And I have an RX 580 here, which absolutely will fit in that Node 202 case, because this is absolutely a 2-slot GPU. So this is a given. This is definitely going to work. So that's my fallback position. I also have a 5700 XT. And this is what I want to use. But I think this is a 2.7 slot card. And I think the Node is a 2.5 slot design. And the 0.5 is actually not intended to be used for the GPU. So I'm going to try and get the 5700 in it, because that will give me performance somewhere around like a 20, NVIDIA 2070, something like that, which will be good, because my target is to do 1080p gaming. But then one of the features of Holo ISO is that it has global FSR enabled, which means that I don't have a 4K screen at home in the front room, but should we add one in the future, we don't have to be capable of producing 4K gaming on the console. We could use FSR to upscale it. So that's sort of the idea. So King Egypt says they are just about to put Holo ISO on a 5800U NUC. Cool, that sounds really good. So that's an APU design. And so King Egypt says, I think the ITX setup will be far more capable. It does present some potential issues as well, which I'll have to work with. And I'll explain some of those. And McPhail asks, how noisy are those cards? Well, it's a good question. In an open test bench, they're pretty quiet, but they're going to be in a really confined, choked off space. So that's something I'm going to have to contend with. And I think that will be the more interesting part of that PC build, is how the cooling works. And I think what I'm prepared to do, in fact, what I'm probably going to have to do, is look at like undervolting the CPU and the GPU to keep like the performance where it needs to be, but just carve off a little bit of the heat that it produces. And I think I may have to look at, I've got some spare case fans at home. I may have to see what I can do about adding additional ventilation, maybe even doing some modifications, like removing the shroud from the GPU, maybe even removing the fans, and then zip tying regular case fans directly onto the heatsink of the GPU. You can't do that with all models of GPU, and I don't know if it's possible to do it with this one. But if it is possible to do it, it can result in some significant cooling advantage. So we will find out. We will learn together, McPhail, because until I start trying to cram all of this stuff in a small space, I won't know exactly like how it's going to go. Now, McPhail, you also, in fact, you make the point here. Here we go. So McPhail says, I'd rather have an APU with a big fan than a GPU for something like this, assuming that upsampling tech runs on Linux. Yeah, and I don't disagree. And I do have two very small form factor builds at home that use APUs. I've got a 2400G, I think it was a 3400G, and I've also got a 4750G, so APUs. So Yannick asks, what is an APU? An APU is something that won't exist for much longer in the AMD speak, but AMD have released CPUs that are just CPUs, and CPUs that have an integrated GPU, and the ones with the integrated GPU they have called APUs. So it's an AMD CPU with an integrated GPU. And I have 3 APU options at home. 2 of them are a bit weedy. So I also have this. This is a B550 motherboard that can support the various APUs that I have. So if I can't cool all of that stuff effectively, then my fallback position is to use this motherboard and probably the 4750G and do an APU only build. So that would be my fallback position. So yes, McPhail, I've played with the GPUs quite a lot, the APUs quite a lot, and that 4750, I think it may have been with this RAM actually. I could really overclock this memory, and I think I managed to get about 70% more game performance, just because obviously it's an APU, so it uses system RAM as VRAM in air quotes, and I was able to overclock this quite a lot. So, you know, like you say, have an APU with the largest cooler imaginable, but of course I've got to use a slimline cooler, and I'll get to that now in fact, because this is probably where I'm going to have to spend some money, but I don't want to. So the first thing I've got here is I've got Carbonort thermal pad, which I can use to go here, so that will go. This goes between the CPU and the heatsink. This is an alternative to thermal paste. No mess, it's great. I use these a lot now, but if I need the extra performance, I've also got some Cryonaut paste as well as an option. And then I happen to have this, which I'd actually forgotten that I had until this morning when I went through one of my boxes. And this is a low profile cooler for AM4, and it's only 37mm tall. And this I bought for a project where I think my clearance was 34mm, and I thought this might just work, but it didn't. Now, I think the clearance that I have in the node is more like 54 or something. So I might have to get creative and do things like sell this, add that money to the budget, and then buy the slightly bigger version of this for the 202. But I'm thinking I might have a go at getting this to work, because the 5900 is a 65 watt part. And I think I bought this for another 65 watt build, but I can't remember. What does it say? What does it say it can support? It doesn't on the outside of the box, unfortunately. So I'm going to have to go and look all of this up, because I can't see what the intended TDP is for this. But this may work, and certainly it should be enough that I can put that on here and do the initial configuration of the board. Because one of the other things I'm going to need to do is configure the motherboard, and another reason why I may need to use this instead of this X570 is this is PCI Gen 4 for the, I think, GPU lanes and one of the SSDs. But the Node 2, for its, given its age, is PCI Gen 3. And if this motherboard doesn't have an option in the BIOS to fix the generation of PCI to Gen 3, I know it's going to be incompatible with the riser card that comes in the Node 2 case.
Thank you for the follow, NS Mutable.
Hello, NS Mutable. Welcome to the stream. So, it's handy that I have some parts kicking around that I can be flexible in terms of how I approach this. So it isn't clear whether this is going to be something with a 5900 and a discrete GPU or something with an APU yet, but it will be something, and we'll learn together. So McPhail says, I know I keep banging on about it, but Xbox nailed it with the Series S. Yep. Looks lovely, APU with upsampling. Indeed. Large fan, so virtually silent. Yeah, and this is where I've got a bunch of fans, and also somewhere at home I do have, it was for another project, but I have some large heat sinks, or larger heat sinks, that are actually designed for AM4 processors in low profile server racks, and that was for this other build, these other small form factor. These are my Commodore cases that I have. I'll just bring up on screen what I'm talking about, because this will make more sense if you see them. So, this outfit here, my retro computer, who are actually based just a few miles down the road from me, they make this reproduction Commodore 64 and VIC-20 case, which takes mini ITX motherboards. So my two APU builds, which I think are using B450 motherboards, are in these cases at the moment, and the clearance between the keyboard and the motherboard is only like 30 something millimeters. So I've got some low profile fans or low profile coolers and fans. So I bought a low profile cooler, the IS30, and then replaced the fan that it came with an Octua fan to get quieter and better performance. So I've got two of these, but for these builds I also bought some very chunky heat sinks, which I ended up not using, but I'm not sure which box they're in at home, but I'm going to try and find those, because they could be a good replacement. Hey Golpy, welcome to the stream, and I see Phil has got some information for me here. So Phil says 61 NSPR TDP. I'm not sure what NSPR means, Phil. I'm sorry, not a thermodynamic expert, but yeah, I'm hoping that this will serve a purpose. If I mean, the other thing is not to do a good job of making their stuff look gorgeous in the packaging and what have you. Also more thermal paste. So this is the cooler. Oops, I'm not on the right view of it. So this is the cooler. I mean, there's not going to be much additional clearance, to be fair. So I may end up using this. But the 5900 is a 65 watt part, and I'm sure this is 65 watt capable. And I think with some additional case fans and what have you, maybe, it should perform just fine. So I'm going to try and use it, because as you can see, I don't have the budget to really not use it. So it might be a compromise, but we'll see how we go. So that's the plan for the PC. I think that's all of the parts I've brought in with me. The advantage of using this is it's a shorter card. I won't get quite the same performance, but this will do FSR very nicely. So I think we'll be able to play most of the games we're interested in at a decent resolution in the future, and a good resolution now. But because it's a shorter card, there should be space to put additional, and it's a thinner card, there should be plenty of space to put additional case fans in. So I think this represents the best criteria for success with a discrete GPU, even though it's quite an aging GPU, but better than an APU for sure. And I think this is the moonshoot. I think if I can cram this in a Node 2, it's either going to be glorious success, or it's going to be far too hot. But like I say, I have seen people cram 3080s inside a Node 2. So yeah, I agree. The RX 580 is oh, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? There we go. The RX 580 is indeed a nice GPU, and I haven't really used that one very much, so it would be good to, you know, find a home for it. Athiel says the 5700 XT is a nice heater in the winter months. True, although I've just switched over to Radeon GPUs in my main workstation at home. in order to put a stop to the outrageous heat that the 3090 was producing. And also what I did to combat that is I've taken my AIO out, so the all-in-one liquid cooler. I've taken that out and replaced that with Noctua, a big Noctua heatsink and dual push-pull fan configuration. And that has dropped the temperatures massively. I think the CPUs were overwhelming the AIO, and it was turning the AIO quite literally into a radiator, as in it was full of heat, and that heat was being dumped out of the case and was basically a floor heater for me. It was really hot, and because I'd got the case configured to push air out, it was just constantly blowing hot air, not warm, hot air at me. So I've inverted that. I've taken that radiator out. Those fans now pull in, and it's brought the whole thing down. So even in this ridiculous temperature, when I was playing games with my daughter yesterday, the whole system, everything, CPU and GPU, was topped out at 60 degrees, which I think's perfectly reasonable given the current temperature, and we have no AC at home or anything like that, as opposed to like the 80 plus degrees that it was previously running at. Good morning, good morning. Hello, hello, Linux Hacksaw. Very good. Welcome. You're among friends. All Linux enthusiasts here. So welcome to the stream. So let's say Charafu asks a question here. They say, does this Steam Deck alternative require a separate battery in a suitcase? Are you talking about the PC build that I'm doing here? Because technically the PC build is not the Steam Deck alternative. The Lyra is going to be like the Steam Deck alternative. Let me just bring up the appropriate view. So this thing here is a Raspberry Pi 4 chassis case, and that's going to be running Steam Link to become a console, and also my retro home stuff. The PC I'm going to build inside this case is going to be a PC, and it's going to be taking power from the wall. It's going to be installed under the telly, a game controller, and I've got a Windows 10 wireless dongle. I'll put that round the back. My daughter and I have a controller each. Both of them are Xbox controllers that can talk to the wireless dongle. So we'll do that, and then the ports around the front. Hello, Crazy ManQ. How you doing? Welcome to the stream. And then these two USB 3 ports around the front we can just use for charging the controllers when they need to. And I've got two wireless keyboard and mice combos at home, so one of those will become the the keyboard when you need a keyboard and mouse for this thing, because the Holo ISO project here comes with the option to include the desktop piece, which I'm thinking I will do, try and recreate as much of that sort of SteamOS experience on this device as possible. So Hakiri Knight says, hello, by the way, welcome back. I just turned my guest PC into a Steambox. Okay, I'm very happy with it. What did you use as the OS, by the way? So it serves as an experiment. See if Steam Machine, yeah, could be saved. Yeah, you used Holo ISO. Yeah. Okay, so I hadn't registered that Holo ISO was such a complete implementation of SteamOS 3 until the weekend when I started thinking about all of this. And it was really finding that really got my mind thinking about, yeah, let's make something. Yeah, indeed, yeah. So, yeah, Hikiri is basically saying what I was pointing out earlier, which is this Holo ISO is very close to a legitimate SteamOS experience. There are a couple of caveats, but if you go all AMD, it should be fine. So, have I... So that's all of the toys that I'm going to be using to build this stuff. And at some point I'll have to get this all going. I was thinking I could do it today, but then the one thing I've neglected to bring with me is a kettle. Oops, is a kettle lead for this, so I can't actually power this thing on and do anything useful with it, which is a bit frustrating. So I can't actually do anything, but I think the next steps are to put the Carbonaut pad on, stick the cooler on, power this up, see that I can configure PCI Gen 3, and then wait for the case to turn up. And then I think that could be massively frustrating because I've built in a couple of small cases that didn't have too much wires and what have you to deal with, only the essentials. But the Node 202 is by far the smallest case I've built in recently. So I have thought about a couple of things I'm going to do to limit my frustration. Let's see if there's a picture here. Yeah, there we go, here. So this section here at the back, can I bring... Oh, it's bigger. There we go. Good. This piece here with the screw in the center, each side of this, it is intended to be a 2.5-inch SATA drive. So I'm deciding I'm not going to put in any SATA, any 2.5-inch discs. I'm going to use NVMe only because I already have them. So I'm going to take this out, remove it entirely, and hope that I can buy back just a tiny bit of case space here in order for pushing cables around the internals, because this, if I get this right, this is the GPU sits here, and I know for sure I'm not going with the GPU that I want to get in here. I can't be having this cable here. It won't work. Neither can I have these cables routed this way. So I'm going to have to route those cables probably along the back here and down here, and this cable I'm probably going to have to route along the front here, because I can't have any cables in this space here whatsoever. So I'm going to have a think about how to do all of this. So this could be hugely frustrating, and it could be some of those frustrations that cause me to go with like the RTX 580. But we'll see how we go. Yes, so Elite Hacksaw, AMD for the win indeed. I've been hugely impressed with the 6900. I installed that last week. I do wish that their H.264 and H.265 encoders were of comparable quality to NVENC. They are not. They are very far from it. I see that the AMF tooling has been improved recently, but that means using the AMD GPU Pro drivers, and they are not great. So there are compromises, but if you know, so I've put a small NVIDIA T600 in my PC at home just to do NVENC encoding. So Hakiri says that their guest PC has close hardware to the original Steam machines. So an i5 4th gen 500 to 650 watt PSU and a GTX 960. Yes, I did see that it was the curiously it was the 900 series cards that were supported, and I think it's because SteamOS is using the new open GPU drivers from NVIDIA, not Nouveau and not the regular proprietary drivers, and NVIDIA have not landed broad hardware support in those drivers yet. So I think that's the main limitation with the use of NVIDIA with SteamOS 3. But yeah, so I've got a 750 watt small form factor power supply here. I think that's probably overkill. Here it is here. And I think there's going to be ample headroom. But what I'm also hoping is that because it shouldn't be straining too much, because it's a 65 watt CPU, 225 watt GPU, I think we can probably cap out the rest of the system at probably about another 50 watts. So it's borderline going to be like a peak threshold. So maybe this will run without having to spin the fan. Maybe it'll be cool enough that it doesn't generate much heat. So we'll see how we go with that. And then I've also got these. You can probably see these. These are Wi-Fi antenna. So instead of running cables and things. So, and just, yeah, so Lee Haxel said that the AMB is better. It's not better than NVENC now. It's almost as good as NVENC, but it does require the AMFS SDK on Linux, and it also requires a custom build of FFmpeg, so it's non-trivial to access at the moment. You have to use the AMD GPU drivers. Game performance using the AMD GPU drivers can be awful, can be way off, like half or worse the performance than the open source drivers. And it is easy to switch between the open source drivers now, RazPad and the AMD GPU Pro. So it's something I'll probably look at in the future, but it also requires a custom build of FFmpeg as well in order to enable AMF. And then in OBS, you need to do, again, a custom enablement in StreamFX. So there are many reasons why it's not quite there, and one of it is the sort of the software and hardware ecosystem for it, the drivers and everything. It's just not as convenient. But I'll investigate that at some point, I think. Yeah, so Aethiel talks about the M1, and yes, they've obviously got their own media engines on their silicon now. So McPhail says, what Wi-Fi dongle? So this is not a Wi-Fi dongle. There's Wi-Fi, I think it's Wi-Fi 6 integrated on the motherboard. These are just instead of running wired antenna, these are just small, stubby aerials. So there's two of these to act as the aerial. And you can find those on Amazon. They're a few quid. But I prefer these to running those little sort of shark fin antennas off the back of the cases, because they get tangled up and covered in cobwebs and things. So yeah, I don't have a good recommendation for like a USB dongle, because I've not used one of those for a long time. It's been integrated in the motherboard in some fashion. Yeah, I think it's Wi-Fi 6. I'm not certain. I'll tell you what, let's go and find out. It's a Gigabyte X570 Aorus Pro. So let's go and find out. Let's go and see what it is. Let's see what we can find. So it's motherboard, it's Aorus, its chipset is AMD. Oh, come on. Why are you being so stubborn? X570 SI? I don't think that's what I've got. I think I've just got an I. X570i Aorus Pro Wi-Fi. It'd really be good if I could just mini ITX. I think that's it there. There we go. So what does this have? Yeah, Wi-Fi 6. There we go. So that's what's on this board here. It's pretty well decked out, this bit of kit. It's nice. And I think the CPU support is quite decent as well, in that I think I can run all the APUs on this, and if I can't, that 550 definitely supports it. Supported list, here we go. We don't need memory. I wonder where the... Oh, here we go. There's the AP. Oh, it's memory support. I don't know. Oh, here we go. CPU support. Here's the thing. So I'm sure it will. I know it works with that CPU. And hello, Cube Sudo. Well, welcome to the stream. So I know that this 5900 is compatible with motherboard, because obviously it's been in there for a while. And that's what I intend to start with, even if I have to undervolt it. I'm not going to go as far as. Yes, that